Hi friends, this is Lethea from Farmview Creators. Today we're going to work on a mini barn quilt set from the Rust Covered Cottage by Christina. This kit is the kit containing the patterns Friendship Star, Shoo Fly, Flying Geese, and Garden Path. So I decided I wanted to decoupage these. I printed out some pretty designs on rice paper that I got off of Amazon. I got the digital files from Etsy, and I have those linked below. And so I put the pieces on there. I did take some of the pieces out, as you saw earlier, to give it more dimension. I am going to paint a few pieces with some Paint Couture Garnet. That's a mineral acrylic. I love these paints. They go on very smoothly. I am painting with the grain for each piece. And going in with a thin layer at first and then a thicker layer on the second coat. And then on the Garden Path pattern, I am painting the entire background, the garnet color. And then on two of them, I'm going to paint Duck Egg Paint Couture mineral acrylic paint. Again, I'm using 2 layers for each one, always thin on the first layer and thicker on the second. As it dries, those score lines will show through the paint, so it'll still be there to help you line up your pieces. And then on the fourth background, I am going to go in with DecoArt Buttermilk. I love the buttermilk color, and I used it on the beaded frame that these inserts fit in perfectly. So I'm going to get 2 layers on that, give them a good dry in between each layer. Dries pretty quickly. And then I'm going to go in and start my second coat, and you can see how as it has dried, those score lines do come back through. So don't be afraid of that. Meanwhile, off to the side, all of those pieces that I used the Paint Couture Decoupage medium on are drying and getting nicely adhered to the paper. I did not iron them or anything like that, and they still did not have any kind of wrinkles because I pressed pretty hard when I put them on the paper. But I do like to make sure that that is completely dry before I try to go in and cut the pieces apart. You can get 2 other sets of 4 barn quilts that are available from the Rust Covered Cottage by Christina. There is also the set that includes the pinwheel, ribbon star, sawtooth star, and the single wedding star. And then the third set of 4 includes the Ohio star, the log cabin, and spools, and then turn and dash, which I made another video with those for. So I'm getting my mini sander ready, putting a new strip of paper on there, and then I'm giving each background piece a good little sand just to kind of give it that distressed look, since my frame is kind of vintagey looking. I wanted to make sure that my pieces went along with that. And now I'm adding Debbie's DIY dark wax around the edges and then through each background piece, and I'm buffing it out with my fingers as I go. I'm just randomly placing that on there, but I like to get those edges because it does give it some more dimension. And then I am going to get around each of those garnet triangles. And then I was going to pull those up, and then I decided I needed to keep them down to put my favorite top coat, Dead Flat, from Paint Couture on the pieces. I do like to do this before I glue my pieces together. That way I know that they have full coverage and that there's no pooling around the little pieces. So after I get that painted, I'm going to set it to the side, and now we're going to go in with our decoupage pieces. And I'm just cutting the large chunk of paper off of each one and then setting them to the side. I will use that paper again. It's beautiful. And then I'm cutting my pieces apart and sanding around each of the edges and making sure that it is adhered all the way around. And then I keep on going. Lots of cutting and sanding for this project, but I love how it turned out, so it's totally worth it. All of the kits from the Rust Covered Cottage by Christina are very beautifully cut with nice, clean cuts, and they are packaged perfectly so that you have all of your pieces. In fact, this kit had the wrapping around all four, and then each of the mini barn quilts was wrapped individually as well. So you don't have to do all of them at once if you want to take it slowly. On that square piece, I just kind of slit the inside and then pulled that sander up through and then sanded downward. You want to make sure you always sand downward. I've got a nice little pile of shavings over there. And all those little pieces were kind of hard to hold on to, but it's worth it, I promise. Okay, now I am kind of gathering the pieces and putting them with the other pieces that go with the same set. And I'm going in with my Debbie's DIY dark wax that you know I love, and hitting the sides, and then also on my finger just kind of rubbing that wax through the pieces to give it more of a distressed look. I like the distressed vibe. And then hitting all of those little tiny pieces, all four sides, all three sides. Notice that I am sorting them and trying to keep them together with what other pieces they go with. And I do keep my wax brush in a Ziploc bag so that it stays nice and moist. I don't want it to dry out too much. Here I'm going in on all of those little pieces with my sticky board, putting a layer of the dead flat top coat to take out any shine that might be there. It also seals in the sides of the paper onto the wood. I did make sure that I got those edges so that it would be there. And here I am putting the pieces on the backboard that they belong on after I got them good and dry. And I kind of lifted that one to see which one it was. You can still see the laser cut score marks, but it can get a little difficult. So you'll see that I pick them up to see if I'm getting them just in the right place. And I had intentionally put these pieces on my paper so that they would go a certain way. So I'll kind of play with them for each one and make sure that they are turned in the direction that I want. And if not, I'll switch out the pieces and put them in a different place and see if I like that better. So here I wanted all of the lines in the paper to go the same direction. So I had planned that, just had to figure out exactly where they went. I could have labeled the bottom of each piece, and I do that when I do larger barn quilts, but on the little ones I decided it'd be okay if I didn't, and halfway through I was kind of wishing I had, but it worked out. And then there I'm getting all of them staggered the way I wanted with the garnet piece and the decoupage piece. And then I saved the garden path for last because it does have the tiniest pieces, and two of the patterns are pretty similar. So I wanted to make sure that I took the time to get them in the correct location. So I'll move some of them around and make sure that they are with the same pattern before I start placing everything. And then I am on all of them, putting them together before I start gluing to make sure that I like how they look. If I don't like it, I can always sand it and start again. That's the beauty of working with wood kits. So I'm going to start with that largest piece first, and I'm making sure that I have it in the direction that I intended and making sure that it doesn't hang off the edge on any of the four sides. And then I'm getting those inner pieces glued down, and there is a little wiggle room, so I was making sure that I had them nice and lined up, and then I'm getting my triangles and my squares where they're supposed to go. I love how all four of these turned out. I have not decoupaged a lot in the past, but I did enjoy decoupaging this, and I'm planning on doing it more, especially now that I have figured out how to print on rice paper and do the designs that I want. And there you have it, in the beaded interchangeable frame. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe. Thanks.